Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sero Boost, the Happiness Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Lu Ngo, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sero Boost, the podcast where we talk about happiness and the science behind it on the weekly. And today in the virtual studio, I have a very special guest, all the way from a very different time zone. I'll get him to introduce himself in a little bit. But we'll talk about skills, competence, mastery, cultivating growth through accomplishment. My guest is Brad Donohue, and he is a distinguished professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. With a recent focus on optimization science, his research is chiefly focused on the development, evaluation, and dissemination of significant other supported programs to assist in goal achievement. It's a pretty big topic today, and we're going to cover quite a few things, especially when it comes to psychology. But I love to introduce Brad through his own lens. So, Brad, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining us. It'd be great if you could share a bit more about your background, the work that you're doing, and especially why you got here in your career right now and why you decided to talk about this particular topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. I basically got interested in psychology when I was an undergraduate at the University of Kansas in the United States. And I had taken a course and watched a videotape of a professor who was working with, children that had autism. And I saw one child that had literally pulled his eyeball out, and they came in with behavior modification and, changed this, this child's life, and the family, was just so, they just were so grateful, and I just remember that. And I went up and talked with the professor, and I said, that was the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. I was in pre-med at the time, and I, just was just so excited. And he told me that that was Nate Azrin. And Nate Azrin was one of B.F. Skinner's students, first one of his students that actually applied what they were learning with animals from the animal studies they were doing with like operant conditioning, and he started to apply it to humans. And he did, things like the token economy, which is, like getting the stickers from, the kids get stickers for doing desired behaviors and other kinds of rewards. And so he was doing that with, people that had schizophrenia at the time. And he was really trying to lower stress down. And I guess Seligman later, really took a lot of the information that they were learning and really started to apply it in a formalized way, and, in developing learned helplessness. So I went down there, and he was the most positive individual I've ever met. And it was really interesting. I went on the first interview with him, and, he asked me, about my background and so forth. And he asked me, I said, hey, I did this report on alcoholism, because that's what he was doing at the time, and gave him the report that I had done for a class. And it was really amazing, because I was such a terrible writer back then. And so he took the time to look at it very carefully, and then he, in his just amazingly positive way, said, "Do you mind if I should put this in my filing cabinet in case I should need it?" And half the references were him with the community reinforcement approach, and so I think he was just doing it obviously to really raise my confidence and help me to feel better. And it was just a wonderful experience. And I said, that's the guy I got to work with. And then and that was a clinical psychology program.
Yeah, that is a very long winding history of how you got here. And that, must have been a lot of learning along the way. I think today's topic is, as I said, a very big one, and we'll cover quite a few things. So hopefully we'll get to know a bit more about why you got to know about all these different insights through your journey as a professional so far. But before we get into the topic, we have a section called Have You Met Brad? And this is where I get recommendations from my guest. I love this part. And each time our guests give recommendation, it's a very different set of things. It gives us a glimpse into what our guests are interested in. And the first thing we always ask is, what is a book you would recommend?
Um, well, I really liked the book that Nate Asrin did on the token economy because I thought he brought in all the information that they were getting on operant condition with positive reinforcement and how important that was and how punishment couldn't possibly work and it was just it's such a it just blew me away when I read it myself. And so I know it's pretty old, it's dated, but it's the information inside of it, is timeless.
Well, I've never heard about that book before, so definitely have to put that on my reading list. Second question is, what's a movie you would recommend?
Well, I don't really think of movies that way, and I probably wouldn't make a recommendation, because I wouldn't really know. I guess I'd have to ask a bunch of questions to try to find out what the person really liked before I'd start making a recommendation.
Okay, so what's your favorite movie then?
I don't really have one. I kind of try to, when I watch movies, I try to get something out of each one, and so I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. I know it probably is not the best answer, but it's the honest one for me.
Yeah. Well, we always try to get something, so I'm going to ask another one in an attempt to get to know a movie. So what's the most recent one that you've watched?
Let's see. I just saw The Breakfast Club again, an old movie, about a bunch of kids that go in and spend the day in like a detention, and so I love that movie.
Cool. There you go. We got a recommendation, sort of, from you. That's good. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good one. What is a podcast that you would recommend, or one that you listen to frequently?
I don't really have one that I listen to regularly. I pretty much, a lot of times I'll just shop around, and then if I see something that's relevant to some of the work that I'm doing, then I'll try to watch it. So I'll pretty much just stay close to like positive psychology. I like things where people are talking about uplifting types of topics. Just positive news, things like that.
Yeah. What is the most recent one that you've listened to that was quite good?
Oh gosh, it was actually a business one, and it was in regards to how to stay humble in a business environment and how to engage, the employees and the consumers in a way that everybody's happy. Kind of like marrying the group, so to speak, to come up with something that everybody likes.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Do you remember the name of the show?
I don't.
Well, I wish you did, because I'm curious about that particular episode. I want to listen to it. Okay, well, hopefully we can ask ChatGPT to find it for us. Yeah, thank you. Next question. Who is your famous role model? Or if not a famous person, who's your personal role model?
Well, when I was young, I loved Fran Tarkenton and Alan Page and a lot of these Minnesota Vikings from American football. And, so I would say they were my role models. I wanted to be exactly like them. It was really, amazing. And then as I grew older, then I started to really like to take a little bit of everybody. And I didn't necessarily have one particular role model. And then, then I started to look at it like, trying to, take on, the some of the positive qualities of people, so like, for example, my mentor would be, Nate Asrin would be probably the person that I would most want to, strive for in terms of his ambition to come up with things that no one else came up with, and, my mother's a very loving person. I like to, I want to be like her in that regard. My wife's very positive and, kind of gregarious, and she, has fun and, has a light side, and so like, it's kind of like just, trying to be like perhaps the qualities more so than a particular person. And, I think, it'd be probably not the best thing to try to imitate someone or try to be like someone in particular, because, that would be hard to do, number one. And then, I don't know that anyone necessarily wants to have the identity of somebody else anyway. So
Yeah,
that's how I
totally.
kind
I
of look
really
at it.
love that. Yeah, sounds good. Final question in this part. What is a course that you've completed that left a really strong impact on you?
Well, I took a course on applied behavioral analysis. I think, as I mentioned, where I was watching, that film of my mentor, and it really moved me because the whole course was built on, operant conditioning and de-emphasizing punishment in general, and also gave me a different perspective of it, like punishment being just the decrease in the frequency of behavior. And so if you think about it that way, there is non-aversive punishments out there. Like my mentor came up with a thing called positive practice, where, you, if the person does an undesired behavior, say if it's a child or even an adult, you could, simply come up with an excuse to explain why the person did it that's not their fault, and then, kind of show them the way to kind of, to do that correctly. And I love it because it was the first of my thinking in terms of trying to meet the individual where they're at, and then trying to, go up from there if they want to, with kind of skill development.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Okay, so now that you've covered some of your recommendations, or not really recommendations, but things that you enjoy, I'm hoping that our audience have got to know you a bit better. And we're going to talk about the topic of the day, which again is skills, competence, mastery, cultivating growth through accomplishment. It's going to be a very big topic, but we always start with our first question. Brad, what does happiness mean to you?
Well, I look at happiness on a continuum from, probably maybe, content or peace, and then kind of growing perhaps to maybe cheerfulness, pleasure, and it's obviously so subjectively defined and different, across people. So, I really don't put much into it, quite frankly, in terms of like the definitional aspect. So, for example, if someone has a very different, um, thought about it, then I just appreciate where they're coming from. So, in preparation for the podcast, I know happiness was going to be a topic, and I talked to my wife because I saw, that might be one of the things that you would want to talk about. And I asked her what was happiness for her, and she just said, I can't think of anything other than happy. And, so happiness is happy for me. And, I thought that was really cool. So she obviously knows what happy is, growing up and experiencing life. So, you know what I mean? So it's hard to define it, but
Yeah, totally.
I think we
Each
all have
guest on this
an
show,
idea of what
yeah,
it
each guest on this show sees it very differently. And I've listened to at this point probably close to 50 different definitions, but I still don't know what it is. And to me, it changes all the time as well. So, it's totally
what do you
fair. If you,
consider it?
well, I think it's the simple things in life. It's little things that I enjoy on the daily, like my cats petting them, hanging out with them, laughing with friends, reading. So it's, it's a accumulation of little things. And I really don't have my fixed definition either. So I totally hear you. It doesn't have to be anything that sounds fancy, because a lot of people are kind of like, oh, I have to define this. And it's like, it has to be something really good. But no, it's not. This is your personal definition. So
Yes,
I appreciate
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Thanks.
So we talk about a lot of different definitions, and we also talk about a lot of different misconceptions. Now, this part is probably a little bit easier because we know what happiness means to us. So we would know what would not be happiness. So to you, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people tend to get when it comes to happiness?
Well, I think absolutely it's it's an expectation that the person puts on themselves that they should be happy or that the happiness should be a particular thing. Because if they're searching for it that way, they're probably unlikely to get happiness, because I think it's just kind of maybe just having a general concept of or general focus, and then kind of moving in that direction, being content with whatever, wherever they're at. Um, so that's what I would probably answer about that one.
Yeah, yeah. It's a pretty big question. And, we have a lot of different misconceptions that we sometimes discuss. I think in the context of today's topic, I would say one of the things that I notice when it comes to achievement is, and this happens to me, this kind of personal, but I think it's like one of the misconceptions that I used to have is I have to accomplish uh, as much as I can to be happy, and that is not true because I don't need to accomplish more. I can just celebrate where I am now and plan for what I want to do next, and that is already happiness. Enjoying what I have right now, and I think that a big part of that is probably mindfulness, gratitude, and a lot of people are like that too. We're always comparing ourselves to others in terms of achievement and accomplishments, and that leads to a lack of happiness. So to me, that's one of the things that I noticed that would probably be related to the topic.
Yeah, and when we're kind of looking at the kind of work that I'm doing right now in research as kind of like an optimization science, really moving in the direction of achievement or performance. However, really being flexible to integrate well-being, mental health within that, because if you think about it, like the end goal is probably mental wellness and happiness and, all those positive qualities. We're all looking for that. And then performance is kind of like a way to get there, and as long as we kind of look at it like more of, the skills are just things to help us as tools to get, in that general direction, then we're probably going to be okay, to some extent. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, totally.
we've been doing a lot of research where we are starting to see, and I think this is consistent with where the direction of the National Institutes of Health in the United States is going, is like looking at these moderators, like, like what is it that's necessary to kind of get at that ultimate outcome in, let's say mental health. And, so we're all scrambling to try to find out what those kinds of things are. And I know that they just recently, there's a lot of studies out there that are really emphasizing relationships. If you have really good relationships, then you're kind of really biasing in a positive way that you're going to help, you're moving in that direction. And I remember taking a course with Leo Reyna, and he's the guy that trained this guy, Joseph Wolpe, who, developed a lot of behavioral interventions. And, one of the things that he said in class was that 90% of our problems that we experience and also our solutions are based on relationships. And if you think about it, it probably is true, because that's where all the expectations come in, and, all the friction, but also all the positive things too, and so I think that's probably, pretty accurate. I don't know about the percentage. I think it was just him kind of making a point, but I mean, I think we've integrated a lot of that into the kind of work that we're doing right now.
Yeah, totally. That's interesting when you put it into context, because I think when it comes to accomplishment and talking about relationships and happiness, I've noticed that there's, at least in Southeast Asia, there's a very strong emphasis on, you have to achieve something in the family. Like, this is what you need to achieve. This is by a certain age. This is what you need to do. And there's that expectation. So the relationships could be affected because of that. And it becomes sour, or it becomes not so positive anymore. It kind of puts a strain on you, and it affects your level of happiness. So yeah, it's like everything is super interrelated. And when it comes to relationships and happiness, if we don't talk about accomplishment, it can be quite shallow. But once we do, it's also quite a sensitive topic, because the way you approach it could make or break the relationship too.
Yeah, what we did, it was really fascinating. We started a grant that was funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and one of the things that happened was the funding was to support an intervention for substance abuse in college athletes, and they hadn't really done any studies at that point. NIH had not funded anything relevant to athletes' mental health, and so when I started speaking with the athletic directors, they started to talk about the stigma, and what was happening is they were referring their athletes over to mental health counseling. They would go once because they were mandated to do so, because maybe they came up with a drug offense, or maybe they got in trouble, or maybe, the coach happened to think that they could benefit from mental health counseling. They would go once, and the vast majority of them would then drop out. They go that one time that they had to, and then they would, typically deny services. And so we knew that stigma was going to be a big issue. And so I was talking with Lisa Keller, her in our athletics department, and she said, hey, you guys are going to be focusing on optimization. Why don't you just call it the Optimum Performance Program in Sports? And so we did, and we started to develop our whole nomenclature around this idea of optimal performance, but really kind of gravitated because, what's optimal performance? That's a hard thing to define. And so we then started to talk about optimal thoughts and actions, because those are the things you can control. And optimal feelings are important too, but usually you don't have direct control over it. It's kind of like indirect. You can change the way you're thinking maybe to kind of have an influence, or even do certain things that would be more likely to get, the positive reinforcers from the environment, Yeah. But in general, the things that you can control are your thoughts and your actions. And so we started saying, hey, let's move in the direction of optimal thoughts and actions according to what you think, the individual. And generally speaking, we then started to look at it into this multi-domain kind of area. We would say, all right, what are the areas that are most important? And so we knew mental strength and stability, that's a positive kind of statement of mental health. That's how we were looking at that. For athletes, I think they really like that, And then we looked at relationships and creativity, kind of like their school performance. We looked at physical health, of course, too. And the outcome studies I'm finding are so huge with physical health as related to mental health that I do not know why our psychological interventions aren't emphasizing physical health, even moderate exercise. I even remember I was on my way this past year to Japan, and there was a woman that was doing exercise. She was a stewardess, and she was actually, I don't know what you would call it, but doing the movements, on the airplane during her break. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. And then I'm reading all this literature about how when you do just basic movements, it increases longevity, as well as all kinds of other things. And so it was just blowing me away. But anyway, we started shooting for these 5 areas, and we were just saying, listen, just go, we just want you to, we're going to give you this recording form. And if you do something that you think is optimal, in your opinion, given your resources that you had available, your skills that you had available, that were developed at that time, and as well as maybe the demands upon you, and even chance factors, they come in there. I mean, and so we started to say, if given all those things, just write down something that's outstanding for you in those 5 areas, and then we're going to talk about it. And so they brought those things in. And then we started saying, okay, so what were your optimal thoughts and actions in those situations? And of course, the optimal feelings would come out as they were talking, and we point those things out. But it was really neat because it was almost like, where the athletes were so specialized and focused on performance that they that if anything happened that would upset that, like maybe they were injured, or something happened with a breakup of a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or anything like that, it would really get them kind of disoriented, and they'd be upset with themselves and so forth. So we started to just really just try to bring them up from wherever they were at. And it was really fun. We would kind of, just descriptively praise and talk about all the things that they were doing, kind of validate what they were saying. And then every once in a while, if we saw a violation of kind of like kind of like these optimal thought patterns, we would just point them out. And a violation would be something like outcome-oriented thinking, like I need to get an A. I want to, I want to would be the thing to say, right? Like and we would do kind of like we talked a little bit about some of the different types of thinking. And so we would say, may I challenge you? And almost always they would say, sure. We say, optimize it. And then they'd have to think of something, looking at it in retrospect, what would I have done? So it was kind of nice because we were catching them being good, essentially, wherever they were at. And then we would kind of like challenge them, but only after they were recognized for what they had done optimally. And anyway, that essentially is where we started to move with this program that I'm doing right now. We had some wonderful results, and we had a lot of engagement. And I think just like any psychological, intervention or program, if you can get the people coming in, generally speaking, they're going to figure it out themselves to some extent if they have the guidance for it. And that's what we started to work on.
Yeah, that is really interesting, because one of the questions that we have for you is related to setting and achieving goals. And what you were saying was kind of different, and in a way kind of opposite what we normally hear, because you were saying that people should just see what their optimal level is, or something along that line. But a lot of us set and achieve goals, like very specific, like this is what I need to get, this is what I need to achieve. And in a way, it would affect our growth, our happiness, especially on a personal level, on a professional level. What you were saying earlier brings a new angle to the topic. So now that we've covered that, what do you think of this whole concept of setting and achieving goals and our happiness?
Well, you hit it right on, and obviously you're accomplished, and you're thinking right along the lines of SMART goals, right? Like, and that's how I was trained. The goals are going to be specific, and measurable, achievable, timely, like they accomplished by a certain time, and you would have all those kind of qualities in the SMART acronym, right? And this way you knew if you got the goal or not. And they do it in business all the time, certainly in athletics, and we kind of looked at it a little differently. So we called them dynamic goals because the goals could change. So for example, what if you had a goal to, well, first off, I think I got to say that, a lot of those goals are just, quite frankly, oftentimes unattainable, but not because of the individual, but because of chance factors, and a lot of times they misunderstand what it's all about, so they'll base their goal on an outcome. So like they're going to win a national championship, or they're, if it's a business person, I'm going to get 20 sales this month, and those kind of things are dictated by so many factors that are outside of their control, that ultimately, whether they achieve it or not is going to depend on their efforts. So why not just talk about the effort only, and then the outcomes will come. So whenever anyone kind of comes up with a SMART-oriented goal, we talk about, the positive aspects of like what would go into a SMART goal, because those things are important, but we really want them to just really focus in general areas of just doing the best that they can and then we have a conversation about the skills, and how they can achieve it. So we certainly have in this TOPS program that I was mentioning, we have a lot of ways that you can think, neutrally with a positive bent, so we could talk about that. If they're kind of struggling that way, then we'll bring those skill sets in there. If it's a question of managing their time, well, shoot, psychology has tons of different programs that help you manage your time, and we could bring those in too. But the goals we have is just kind of moving in that direction. And you could just imagine, what if your parent dies, in the middle of one of the processes where you're trying to achieve a goal? Wouldn't that change your SMART goal? Your goals might be adjusted because you now have to go to a funeral, and see, that's totally outside their control. So that's where we started to go in with these dynamic goals, because they're more flexible. But we were not negating or thinking that those SMART goals are not important, because we do definitely believe in the performance part of it.
Yeah. So how do we strike the balance? Because on the one hand, we need to have SMART goals, like you're saying, they are important. On the other hand, we also have dynamic goals, because dynamic goals would keep us going, and it would allow us to be a bit more flexible, account for different situations. And we're talking about skills and competence today, right? And along the way, as you said, there are things that we can do. So I think striking the balance here would have to do a lot with improving your skills and competence along the way, rather than just saying, this is exactly what I'm going to achieve, and not focusing on the process. Because I think a lot of people forget about the process of getting there.
That's right. Well, I think you're spot on. And that's, so we do it through the conversation, right? So just to kind of simplify it, the person says, well, this is something that I achieved this past week. So there was actually a silver medalist in the Olympics that we were working with, and just as an example. And so I asked her what she did that was optimal in her relationships. And she says, well, she thought a little bit, and she says, I thanked my parents for cooking for me. And so, then we have a conversation about it, right? And I acknowledge where she's at. I said, yeah, I mean, my gosh, kids today, they really take a lot of things for granted. And here you are thanking your parents, and this is amazing. And then I thought about it, and I said, may I challenge you? And she says, yes. I said, okay, can you optimize that? And she thought, and then she came back and she says, I could cook for them. And I thought that was just the most amazing thing, and I looked up because her parents were up there, and, her mom's eyes were watering. And it seems something so simple, right? And it kind of gets to that subjectivity that we were talking about earlier. Now, just as easily, we could talk a little bit about in the conversation about, the adequacy of the goal itself, maybe the factors that might have to be controlled in the process to get them to that goal. We can talk about the realistic aspects of it. Is it something that really is achievable? Are there things that we need to manage about the goal, that, to adjust about the goal? I mean, so those conversations are always going to be there, and we always want to kind of encourage, and that's how we do it through how could you optimize it? So it's kind of like meeting them wherever they felt they did the best they could, and acknowledging that, and then, kind of putting it back on them. Well, how do you kind of move in that direction of optimizing it? And they define what that is exactly. So I think it even takes advantage of a lot of some of the things that, say, for example, like Steve Hayes does with, self-acceptance and commitment therapy, and kind of like being comfortable with where you're at. And, and it's not just about the goals, and I think we also bring in a lot of relationships. So picture, we'll have anyone that they feel is important in their life, ideally, in that meeting. And we'll try to take advantage of those resources. And we'll say, Mom, have you ever been there? Is there anything you could suggest along those lines? And when they come out as suggestions, then it really puts maturity on the individual that's there. And so then what we did was we started to apply it, not just for the college students, but then also to athletes that were in the community that were high school athletes here in the States, so the grade schools. And then we then started to apply it to like Cirque du Soleil with, the circus performers, and doing things about pretty much the same concepts, in there. And you were asking about like kind of like the skills orientation of it too. Like a lot of it was like teaching how to make positive requests, and then when people are upset, responding in an optimum way. And we used an acronym called HEARD. So you hear what the individual has to say, you empathize, that's the E, and then you ask them what they think they can do about it. And that's like the solution generation. And then the pros and the cons, and then ask them, what do you want to do? And they used that at CERC when they had experienced a very, very unfortunate accident that had happened. And, it was very, very a difficult time. And there was a lot of upset. And when they used this HEARD acronym, it helped to kind of put things in perspective, that the first thing is to hear what the person has to say when they're upset and then empathize with them. And if you don't do those two things, you really can't move on to the solution generation. And so it's not that we're not considering a lot of the skills. We do. We want to bring them in. But the general focus is kind of, moving them at their own pace.
Yeah. I think that is a really interesting point because whenever someone hears, let's say, skills or competence, they'll think about technical skills or things they need to do more of to train more. Maybe, athletes need to do more training. Business people would have to get more certifications or, do a lot of different programs. But I think a lot of the things that we have talked about cover a very important aspect that we probably don't think about, which is resilience. And I think that's a necessary life skills to have because you can set all these goals and you can start to, let's just say, okay, I'm going to go through this training program at the gym so that I can be a stronger athlete. But along the way, something happens and you just cannot keep going. Or, for example, at work, people can go through burnout and then they're like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, even though the goals are there. That I think is a very big factor. And the resilience we're talking about needs to be supported, in a community. It's not something that one person can do by themselves.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting too, like, because there are applications to business. Business essentially acts like a team. It's a bunch of people working together to accomplish goals. I mean, it's the same thing, really. And I think that's the reason why we've had a lot of businesses that have come up to us and said, hey, can you show our business how to do it? Because we want to get along better. We want to achieve our goals and so forth. And, I think, one of the things I wanted to mention about it was just that, this whole concept of like bringing in the skill development, but really kind of letting the individual, shine. And the thing that's interesting about resilience, I remember this really moving me when I was a graduate student, reading an article that was talking about, kids that had been in low income, really destitute kinds of environments. And I always thought, oh, wow, that's an environment in which you'll see lots of resistance because they've got to kind of get out of that situation. But in actuality, the research is pretty clear that, those kind of environments really keep people down, even psychologically, of course, right? The constant, no's and the lots of very traumatic kinds of experiences. And what happens is even if they get out of that situation, they're going to have a more difficult time reacting to being resilient, like even though they've experienced before and you think, oh, they're desensitized now. It's not how it works. They actually, kind of, come down and don't put in as much effort a lot of times, that in other words, those kind of aversive experiences are not good for the development of resilience. It really comes from praise and encouragement.
Okay, so we briefly mentioned this earlier when we first started talking, when you joined the conversation. Before the recording, you mentioned something about behavior analysis. And to me, this is like a new concept. And I'm pretty sure for a lot of people in our audience, this is new too, because it's definitely psychology and not all of us are trained in psychology. So one of the things that we know here from our research about your work is that there would be the principles of applied behavior analysis. And apparently, this influenced your approach to helping individuals to overcome obstacles and achieve their desired outcomes. We have now covered skills, competence. We've talked a little bit about the dynamics in relationships, even and resilience. So when it comes to this part, how does it come together eventually? Applied behavior analysis, what is it, and how does it help us with our accomplishment and growth?
Well, the first part of applied behavioral analysis is try to understand, historically was to try to understand like a particular behavior. You try to isolate a particular behavior. Say, for example, a person had a tic disorder, or maybe their shoulder uncontrollably jerks up, and we would know that there are influences to the development of that tic, right? And those would be things that happen before the tic actually occurs, and that'd be like an antecedent. So maybe a person, providing a lot of negative statements to an individual, physical hitting someone, or even just getting nervous. And so you might see if those things happen before the tic, we would know that they had an influence perhaps. And then, whatever happens afterwards is a consequence. And so that could be like someone paying attention to the tic when it went on, maybe asking about the tic, pointing out the tic and, or teasing and things like that. And that could make the tic happen more often. So if we look at the antecedents and the consequences for any given behavior, we can kind of, start to really understand why is that behavior happening. And then the cognitions kind of because they're not as as reliable in terms of understanding or isolating, that wasn't considered originally in applied behavioral analysis. And now we kind of have gotten more lax in it. So we start to think about thoughts that happen before the action, perhaps, or thoughts that happened afterwards, and you kind of put it together. And so, applied behavioral analysis in the program that we're developing, we go ahead and really try to emphasize the positive experiences, the consequence end, as like a clinician or as what we call as an optimizer. We're trying to, recognize, what the person's doing that, is wonderful, point that out. Whenever asked, we might try to bring in some skill development, bring in support of others that can help with that. And, so that's how we kind of use, the traditional applied behavioral analysis in the TOPS. And we do it through like teaching how to, make requests, how to respond to people when they're upset with like that herd that I was mentioning. We teach self-control, diaphragmatic breathing and problem solving, generating a lot of solutions and, financial management. When people are really stressed out, they can't think clearly, and so we try to help them to save money. And so those were some of the examples of some of the skills that we bring into that goal intervention that I was mentioning. But it's from a lot of the response to what the consumer is saying, what we call the optimizee, that whatever that person is kind of giving us, we are kind of listening, empathizing if it's a difficult situation, or trying to recognize or reinforce any positive thoughts, provide guidance, things like that. I think a lot of people can really manage themselves with their own goals by just simply thinking, what did I do this week in my relationships that was optimal, or in a given day? What did I do to try to enhance or optimize my relationships? Maybe it's just reaching out to a mom and, for the first time in a while and, and saying something positive, showing gratitude or expressing appreciation and just, thinking about that moment and then thinking, okay, well, how can I continue to do this? Or maybe, do things that are related to that my mother likes and build our relationship. And then when the relationships get built, they kind of move forward. So our general, look at things is to try to, focus in those areas that I was mentioning, like the physical health, the mental strength and stability, the relationships, creativity, and think, what did I do in those areas? And then, okay, I liked this about my, my performance or the things that I was doing and thinking. And then, what could I do to optimize? And I wanted to mention too, like we're starting to work with persons that have like are at risk or have psychotic disorders. So, when people are really stressed, they can say things or see things or, interpret things very differently than, say, for example, a typical person. And so we've started to apply this concept of optimization to those populations to reduce their stress. And we're just now starting to see amazing, results from it. Although we literally are just starting to try out case examinations of it. So we're far from it, but really it's built on reducing the stressors, and that's another thing that I think really helps.
Yeah.
But kind of recognizing what they're doing, and we've also taken. This is interesting, but we started to take like things that people would kind of like tell us about an experience that they had that they felt that they did optimal, and then we have them say it in the first person. So like I'm walking out to my work, and I'm starting to think what I'm going to do today for my agenda. They literally start to think that way. And then we start to bring in these positive messages and interpretations to the things that they're actually sensing. So, for example, like someone might say, "I smell the chlorine," and you say, "Well, what did it smell like?" And they say, "And it stings my lungs." You say, "No, it energizes you. Say it." And they say, "I smell the chlorine and it energizes me, gets me ready. I know I'm prepared." And so it's just the way that we perceive it. Like everybody senses the same, but they perceive very differently. And so why not perceive it, in this optimum way, imaginally? And then what we find is that they start to move in that direction on the outside world too. And, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I did not imagine the things that we discussed today to be related to the topic, but it actually makes a lot of sense. I think it is also because when we talk about achievement, when we talk about growth, a lot of us are kind of like thinking about what we can do more of for that goal directly. But what you're saying is actually really applicable to everyone, because you need to actually cultivate your well-being. And a lot of the things that we don't think about, like relationships, like our own sanity, and just changing the way that we think about certain things really help. And I would like to relate this to what I'm currently going through. And I talk about this on the show quite a bit. So recently I realized that I've been really burnt out, and it's been taking a really long time to recover. And meanwhile, I have a lot of things that I would like to achieve. And so that is kind of affecting my ability to see things clearly, because this is the burnout talking, but I feel incompetent. I feel like I'm not doing anything right. I feel like I'm straying from my goal. I feel like I'm never going to get to where I want to go, and I don't know who I am. So like a lot of these things, happen at the same time, and it's affecting my ability to see my growth and my achievement, even though in the past year or two, I think I've done a lot and I've achieved a lot actually, but I don't see any of that because of the burnout. And when I realized it, I took a moment and I took a pause and I started to do a lot of research into, burnout recovery and, things I can do. And they're actually very simple. They're very simple. It's just, taking care of yourself, completing the stress cycle, having fun, cultivating meaningful relationships, hang out with friends, just do things that would energize me, and definitely shut off from work. So, in order to do more, it's actually very important for us to recognize that whatever we are doing on the daily, we need to change our perspective. Yeah, maybe I'm going to sit here and try and work for another hour by staring at my computer and achieving nothing, or I could just shut off the computer, walk away, rest, and come back tomorrow feeling more fresh, and I can actually do more in the first hour of the day. And I think that's the biggest lesson for me. And when you say the things that you just shared, I was like, it clicked. It makes a lot of sense. This is exactly it, because we grow through what we go through. And when we think about the achievement and the growth, provided that we're taking care of our well-being, it's going to all come together. If we neglect anything that has to do with our level of well-being, physical, mental, and emotional, that's going to affect everything else. Because I agree with you, we cannot really plan for life. Things might happen, things might change. And, if we have this certain goal at a certain age or a certain year to do something, and something in life happens, and we don't really account for that, we didn't think about it, and we just have this really fixed mindset of I have to do this, I think it's actually going to hinder our growth, because we'll feel like we're moving backwards.
Yeah, look how insightful what you were just saying is, right? Like, and what you were saying, we hear it all the time. I'll bet you there's a lot of people that are listening right now that are experiencing the same thing. And it's really fascinating. Like in the field of athletics, you see the athletes are in order to compete at that higher level, they have to start earlier and earlier, and they have to be fixed in that sport, learning these very specialized skill sets. It's just like if you want to be the best firefighter, you can have the same pressures, or a police officer, or a Cirque du Soleil artist. Like in order to get really good at those professions, because our standards keep going higher. At least that's kind of like what the sentiment is, right? And if you just focus on that one area of performance, if something else throws that off kilter, or someone else's opinion comes in and you hear it, and especially with social media like it is today, right? Then that's going to really upset the whole balance. But if you go in there and you think, hey, listen, I'm not just focusing on that one area of performance. I've got performance across my whole life. I've got performance in relationships, my creativity, all of these things impact who I am as an individual. And if you look at yourself as not having a particular identity, like if you were to think about your identity, what would you say it is? Like, what would be the closest to your identity?
Gosh, I don't know. As I told you, I have not felt like myself. I don't know who I am. It's going to take a while to figure it out. So
Yeah,
right now, I don't have a fixed answer.
I
I
think
would
that's a
say,
good thing.
yeah, maybe at this moment, I'm just a human learning to, actually a human figuring out what I want to do. That's who I am right now.
And maybe what you're fighting is, the kind of like the culture of performance, where people, feel as if they have to accomplish a particular thing that society thinks is the right way. And so you're struggling against that. But yet you're kind of looking at it from this, this kind of like, well, how would you call it? Like a like 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 you're looking at the big picture, you know what I mean? And you feel uncomfortable perhaps because in order to get really good at one particular thing, you got to put all your emphasis there. But
Yeah.
I think the fact that you could not really identify yourself as a particular identity is a wonderful thing, because it suggests that you've got lots of different things and you don't look at yourself as just being like a media star or someone that's, moving in a particular, area, right? Like you're a whole
Yeah.
person. And I think that's
Yeah.
what, our dynamic goals have really helped a lot of people with, is because people do have lots of different skill sets. And I think, quite frankly, maybe we need to go back to old school and start bringing in, these ideas of family and, spending the time, to not feel pressure to get a particular aspect of performance. And so that's kind of like where I see things heading. And you see that, like, obviously in the field of sport, people are really burning out, but you just bring up, it's also happening in business and it's happening in a lot of different fields. So,
Yeah.
but there's lots of exercises that can be really fun and, and kind of bring it back to, to the things that we really find important, which is at the beginning you were mentioning about like well-being. Isn't that what it's really about?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's no achievement, there's no growth without well-being. It's just they're going to go hand in hand, and it's going to get uncomfortable at certain points. And I think it's just an interesting thing to think about, maybe for our audience, because a lot of people might think of this topic of achievement as doing more. I would like to counterpoint that and say maybe it's about doing not more in general, but doing more of what you actually enjoy. And that would bring you a sense of well-being, that'll bring you a sense of creativity, and you'll figure out what you need to do and what you want to do, and you perform at work or in sports or anything better. Because I have found that when I spend time to like really work on my physical health, doing exercises every day, I feel like I think better. Yeah, sure, I'll be physically a bit more tired because I wake up early to go to the gym and things like that, but I would think more clearly, because I think a lot of people are going through burnout, and maybe this is what they will find, because this is what I find. You have brain fog. It's like one of the side effects of COVID. If anyone has had COVID, they will relate to this. You would have brain fog, and it's weird because you feel like you're stupid, but you're not. You just don't have enough rest, and you don't have enough, fun in life or creativity. And then you need to bring all of that back to find that balance. And then automatically you feel better. Like I feel like I think so much more clearly nowadays. And I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do even better if I keep resting and relaxing and recovering. But yeah, I find
Yeah,
that to be
because
very interesting.
yeah, the question that we ask is not what could you do, more, but rather what could you do to optimize your thoughts and your actions, or maybe even the way that you perceive things. And
Yeah.
then when they come out with that, then that's the truth, because it's anchored to the process, and
Yeah.
that's the real thing that I think we can have some control over, and we can have some satisfaction with, and quite frankly, it's funny, like that's the kind of thing that we can identify with and then start a conversation about, because everybody can identify with a thought or an action. It becomes a lot more difficult when you start talking about identities and things like that, right? Because what does that mean? Or like when we talk about happiness at the beginning of the show, saying, well, how do you define that? Well, my gosh, everybody has a different definition of that. If we're searching for happiness, then that's going to be a hard thing to achieve, because who knows what that is. But we define it, however the individual believes to some extent, So I love, by the way, that you just disclose that, like, so matter of factly, because I think that's how, like, I think the viewers relate with that. And I think that, people admire like the integrity of honesty and just saying what it's all about, So
Thank
anyway,
you. Yeah.
that we have a lot of good responses from that approach, but it really is, it's not a more, it's really an optimal for your thoughts and your actions. And generally speaking, it is consistent with performance. Like we find that, because when we did studies, we found that in the case of sports, it's sport performance, and it's an indirect measure, but we look at interferences with sport performance, and that's correlated with with our mental health, and so like the two go hand in hand, and so we gotta we're kind of showing that that they do work together. We had another situation was pretty cool where we had the more supportive others that were involved in the what we call performance meetings, the better the outcomes were for their mental health. So, but it didn't matter how long the individuals were involved. It was just that they came in, even if it was just 20 minutes. The more different types of relationships. So like if we had a coach, a teammate, a family member, if we had all those different types of relationships, that was better than to have, like, say, a mom the whole time. And I think because everybody was communicating, like we were all understanding what the athletes were really looking for. They were understanding themselves, and we were all moving in the same direction. So that was pretty cool. So it's the same thing in business, right? Like with employees, supervisors, and employers, like they're all going for, the same goals too, to some extent with business, but then they have their whole lives, and so you try to not just focus on one thing. I remember also when I was a kid, you were asking earlier questions that were pretty cool. One of the things I remember was when I was a kid, that in Japan, they were showing Japanese workers exercising for 15, 20 minutes before their work all together, and they were doing that. I thought it was really cool. Like, and I don't think we do that anymore. Like, why? Like it's just 15
Yeah.
minutes. People, you know what I mean? Like, because we
Yeah.
know it's so correlated with mental health
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
satisfaction. You know.
Well, a lot of teams nowadays are remote, like our team here. 90% of our teams are remote. So it's really hard to say, okay, let's start our day by exercising together, which is why we have all these different initiatives where we say, okay, let's have a challenge where we do 10,000 steps a day, each of us, something like that. It's not the same, obviously, because when you do it as a group, it's more fun and motivating and you feel connected. But yeah, I think there's still things we can do for remote teams, and setting the same goal or just doing the same thing and talking about the same thing, that would create connection, and it would actually improve achievement and performance and goal setting and all that sort of areas. Because I think there's this really big, like, I don't know if it's a misconception. There's a really big misconception, in my opinion, that you need to do more. Like you need to be really focused to be productive, as a team. Like you need to just focus on the task at hand. I actually don't think so. I actually think we need to spend more time as a team. And when you have that bond as a team, maybe you allocate, I don't know, an hour every 2-3 days to socialize or even to brainstorm together. That improves productivity because they feel a sense of connectedness and they don't feel as tired or disconnected from the work that they're doing. So that's what I would encourage, personally from my team. Like I really like that.
Yeah, well, something related to that is kind of like almost like a compromise in the sense that we can optimize the efficiency of the task at hand when we're doing that. But then, by being more efficient, we now have more time to do the things that you're mentioning. So it's kind of like there is an effective balance there. And one of the things that we're finding here in the States is that our children are having these mental health disorders and risk, like really like just subclinical mental health disorders. And one of the biggest predictors of that is social isolation that happened starting off with COVID. But COVID actually sent these habits into place for a lot of the families where the kids just started to get their new reinforcers, i.e. the cell phones and the Zooms and all the rest of it, and it's just not the same intimacy, as you get when you're out there outside playing and that kind of thing. So I think it's probably to a large extent the same with work too. Like we're in a sense isolating ourselves a little bit when we do that remote stuff. So it's interesting because I think the pendulum's going to swing around, because I think we all liked working at home quite a bit more, right? Like it makes sense. We could probably do it just as productively in many regards. However, it's, in my opinion, and oftentimes it's not as fun. Like I want to be with my colleagues and I want to be with my students and I want to kind of interact with them and see their affect, right then and there, and that kind of thing. So I don't know.
Totally.
It's a fun adventure as we start to move forward and kind of get ourselves back to the swing of things. I think right now we're very sensitive to a lot of the things that influence us, and a lot of people are just kind of searching for that that happiness, or what you were mentioning, and really maybe we need to get back to just focusing on the pleasantries, the things that we really like in multiple areas, and just kind of say, hey, I don't need to go into this tunnel vision, for this one particular job or sport or business, and but I can still be productive, so that's kind of fun to think about.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, anything fun is always fun to think about. But I think if we're gonna keep going down this path, we're never gonna wrap this up. I love talking about this topic. I think there's so much more to cover, even. But let's talk about something practical for our audience, because we've covered a lot of the psychology, the theory, and your research and the work that you've been doing, which sounds quite fascinating. But to the average audience, they might go, okay, so what do I actually do? So, which practice do you personally employ to cultivate growth through accomplishment?
Well, for me, I think I erred on the side of being too spontaneous and too just almost reflexive in my communication sometimes. I would just say what I thought right away. And, and that's probably okay for me to some extent because it pushes the conversation, to a large extent. I could get a lot of information very quickly. However, the quality of the information, I don't think is as good because, I'm not giving the other person enough time to really think about it from their perspective and kind of, dictate the conversation. And so one of the things that really helps me is that herd that I mentioned, I really, find it, I think the hearing part of it is like really critical. Like you listen to the person and truly listen, like sincerely to where you're really interested in what the person's saying, and they can tell. Like they can tell if you're just faking it just to kind of, give some time or whatever. If you really are interested, even if it's not the area that typically historically has been interesting for you, maybe there's something that the person could say that will kind of like energize you or give you some new information that you didn't know about before, and you can become interested. So I try to like literally think about what the person's saying and try to relate that to myself and my own experiences, and then kind of spit that back to the person, and then kind of really carry the conversation based on something that they're really good at. And I did not do that really well, and I'm still struggling to kind of get that better. But then, then to if it's a difficulty the person experienced, the empathy then comes in, right? Like, and that's important. And then asking them what they would like to do with it instead of me throwing in my advice. I think that a lot of us go ahead and just like to throw out our advice. We think we know the answer. And I think it shows a lot more wisdom to just listen what they're saying, empathize, then ask what they think would happen. And we could all learn a lot that way. And then review the pros and the cons, or the good things and the bad things about that, and then ask them to decide. And I think that we all kind of want to help, to some extent, right, the other person that we're talking to. And so, a lot of times we might throw in our biases that way. And I think that kind of offsets the natural process, of them really finding it themselves and moving in that direction, especially for young people, and so I like that one. It keeps me going. The other thing that I found from a lot of the new stuff with it's been around of course for a while, but it's new for me, is a lot of the gratitude exchange, appreciation exchange, and the importance of that. Like I think, like you were talking about before, like if you're in the employment setting, like, I wonder how much of the difficulties that we've experienced as a society is based on the idea that the employers and perhaps the employees haven't had an opportunity to exchange what they appreciate. Because when they get together, they've got to solve the task at hand, like you were saying, and so you got to get right to it because you don't have much time with that person. Yeah. And so where's appreciation going to come in? Sometimes we don't have the time for that, or at least we don't make the time. So I think that's got to be kind of like in the front end. And we do a lot of that in our programming. And I think that that's important, and expressing how we have gratitude for people. And, so those are probably the two big ones for me. We have some communication exercises, like how you could, request things in a way that the person's more likely to want to do them. We do a lot of like things like diaphragmatic breathing and relaxation exercises. I think that's important. A basic physical exercise. Like I've been reading the literature and seeing so like the effect sizes or the power of physical exercise is extraordinary. And we're not just talking about going out there and running a marathon. In fact, it's actually just moderate exercise, getting out there and trying to walk. And it doesn't matter what your goals are, you'll help to move in that direction. And so I think, that's something that we're trying to, get involved with, like the physical health, but and then having the balance, with a lot of different areas that you're trying to just do the best you can. The other thing that we've done that we've gotten a lot of feedback for that helps is that, as I mentioned, we have those 5 goal domains the physical health, the mental health, the relationships, and the creativity, and the work in the school, and they're just focused on those areas, right? Well, like sometimes it might be important, say on a Wednesday, to really focus on your school because there's some things going on that way. And so most of your attention is going to be on that. But the next day, maybe it's creativity, because you have some exercises there. So I think it's also not losing focus in these multiple areas of life, that they're all important, and sometimes like it doesn't mean that you've missed a goal if you didn't accomplish something that you had set in one of those areas, as an example. You know what I mean? Like it just means that those other areas have become more important in your life at that time in your life. And so I think that that's a nice perspective to have, that we're trying to go in that direction.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, not just one practice. We have multiple that we can choose from and try. And I like that, we talk about different ways to actually focus on our mental and physical health, and increase and improve the quality of interaction with others, because I think you're right in a way. When it comes to achievement, teams don't talk about achievements as much, especially when they're in a crisis mode, or they're really dealing with some things. Or this is sport related. This is going to be funny, but recently I got into Formula One, so I've been following Formula One, and it's really easy to say, okay, Ferrari's not really performing this year, but because I'm a Ferrari fan. But when you really talk about what they have achieved so far, it's quite incredible. And maybe there's a bit of a setback right now, but it doesn't mean that they will stay there forever. And yeah, like I think even with my team, we talk about, okay, what do we need to solve this week? Like something else is not going right, but we don't talk about what goes right a lot of the times, and that is something we need to do more of. So yeah, I think that's a really positive note that anyone can try, and even little accomplishments, like it doesn't have to be work related. It could be just, oh yeah, I missed a workout today, but last week I did 7 workouts. Like, that was good. Something like that
and
would be
see,
very
it's interesting
uplifting.
because like you said, what the majority of people think, right? Like what went right, and let's catch them being good. And the interesting thing is that's kind of subjective, believe it or not, to some extent as well. Like, I mean, we're trained as human beings to think in that way, but in the actuality, there's an optimization part of that, right? Like, so if you ask the question like, hey, what did you guys do that was optimal in this particular area? Then all of a sudden you get a completely different, unrestricted response. And now we can play with it, and we can kind of get creative because there's no criticism attached to that. It's just based on like the love of communication and trying to share the things that we're doing well. And so I think that's important too. But yeah, just maybe spending some time. We used to do a thing, catching my coworkers being good, and we'd pass out a form, and everybody would write what they could write about anybody. And the general spirit was that if you saw that someone wasn't acknowledged for a given week or whatever, you usually could find something that you could put in there. But it was a natural process. And generally speaking, everybody got acknowledged at least once or twice when we passed that form around. And then someone would read it. They would read all the things. Oh, yeah, Julia did an amazing job managing a very difficult situation on the phone. I loved it how she did blah, blah, blah. And it really taught me a lot. So they would tell these little anecdotes, and we would share them. And so I one time I started to get really focused on this grant, and we had a deadline that was coming up. And so I said, listen, we don't have the time for that. Let's just go ahead right now, and we're gonna put that aside, and let's just get right. That'll give us an extra 10 minutes every meeting. And so we did that for 2 weeks, and then the students came back to me and they said, Dr. Donohue, can we go ahead and add this back? We really think it's important. And this is way before COVID. This is maybe like 10 years ago, and I was really impressed with that. I was like, wow, yeah, sure, we could try that out and keep it up. And then we did. And so we started doing it. But anyway, I was amazed at how effective that is, to start the meeting just in general about things that they caught being good. And it really sets the whole culture of positivity. And so anyway, that would maybe be another strategy, is just,
Yeah.
having, people exchange things that they thought was optimal, that they were observing,
Yeah.
or just,
Yeah. So
that kind of thing.
optimizing that aspect would be, yeah, super cool. I like that. Okay, so now we are approaching the end of the show, and we've covered theory, we've covered practice, we've got a bunch of practices that people can try, whether, with their own performance and achievement or with their team. Now, I wonder what you're passionate about. This is our open mic. I'm sure you're passionate about your work, but what else are you passionate about these days?
Well, I like to spend a lot of time with my family doing hikes, and we've got a place in Oregon, and it's just absolutely gorgeous, and so I do a lot of that. Um, I'm of course, I like to watch sports. That's where we were going with our research recently. So I'll do that. Yeah, I just probably a little bit more on the outdoorsy stuff, and I'm really valuing the physical health part of it. So I'm trying to get back into good habits that way, where I can, get out, take walks with my family. My wife in particular, she loves walks, and that's really good. And also my friends, and the people that I enjoy spending time with. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably what I like to do that.
Yeah, sounds very healthy and sounds very, on brand with the topic, because today we're encouraging people to do that. So I'm glad you're doing that for yourself too. Before I let you go, if our audience would like to find out more about your work or would like to get in touch for a collaboration, how can they find out about you?
Yeah, so there's a website that we have called topscience.com, TOPP science, and or they can maybe hit TOPS and UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That's for, and yeah, we have a website that shows a lot of different strategies that people can do, and yeah, so we could, and in fact, we have actually a lot of studies that are up there where you could just hit the link and, get access to it. And we just recently did this wonderful book I did with Joanne Perry, and she's a sports psychologist for a couple of the NFL teams, and actually an NFL team and an NBA team, and called Mental Health in Athletes. And the optimum performance program in sports. So that would be probably the best resources that I'd have available.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, and thanks for joining the show. I hope you had a good time. I definitely found really enlightened. I felt enlightened after this conversation, because it's definitely very different from what I expected to hear. But yeah, I'll definitely try to take all these insights on board, and hopefully our audience will benefit from them as well. You've been listening to Sero Boost, the Happiness Science Insights podcast, produced by the Happiness Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at ha.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Lu Ngo. Thanks for tuning in.